I thought we could settle this like men.
You thought wrong, dude.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another Broken Meeple review, and we're continuing with the whole Wild West theme here. Last time you saw me, you would have seen me go over Carson City, the card game, where I was kind of umming and ahhing about it. It's got a lot of good stuff about it, but it's also got a lot of really irritating things as well. Well, I've never played the big brother of this, Carson City, which is a Euro worker placement game, and quite a popular one at that. So now was the time I could actually sink my teeth into it with this new, very fancy looking big box version. Big box Carson City. This is still the same designer, still the same publisher, Quint Games, except now it's got this sort of fairly cool black box with gold star writing on it and a lot of upgraded pieces, but primarily it's the same game just with an expansion and some variants thrown into the box. So think of this as your complete Carson City collection now. Carson City is a Wild West themed game. It is worker placement and you are buying up land in this area of Wild West, Carson City, Nevada. And the idea is that you're trying to accumulate wealth by buying up really good areas of land and populating them with properties. You can buy things from banks, saloons, ranches, mines, etc. And you are, putting them on your various parcels of land, as they call them, which is basically another word for a square. And they will generate you income. You use this income to acquire victory points, you use it to get more buildings, to acquire more cowboys potentially, which are your workers, and you'll carry this play on for 4 rounds. Each round there will be a selection of characters that you will be able to choose from. It's fixed for the game, but there's a lot of characters present. And then you plan where your workers are going to go down, and then you resolve the actions in a kind of sort of snake-like fashion via the board's action spaces. Now in this game there's a slight tweak to how you normally think of worker placement. This is much more interactive than most other Euros because you don't block each other's spaces. Instead, you duel. You can share an action space, but you have to have a duel afterwards, when it gets to resolving it, and it's basically a die roll plus some modifiers, and the winner gets to take the action, the loser goes back to the reserve of the player who placed it. So you can deny actions from other players, but there's a little bit of luck with some mitigation involved. And at the end of a round, you just clean up, rinse and repeat the characters, and you go again. Turn order plays a big part, where the turn order will change depending on what characters you take and what order you pass in, but primarily, you're basically doing take a character, plan your actions, resolve your actions, rinse and repeat for another 3 rounds, for 4 in total. And that's it. Most victory points wins.
Of course!
And that's basically the crux of the game. So there's not a huge amount you need to necessarily know in terms of mechanics. There are a few rules that you need to bear in mind, like the rules when you build, that you've got to populate the board with these houses, and certain buildings require you to be connected to a little road system. There's a couple of little fiddly aspects like that, but for the most part the rules aren't actually that complicated. Not to say that this is a light game by any means, but I probably wouldn't go as far as to call it heavy either. I would say this is more a medium weight Euro game. It doesn't take too much to get into, but I wouldn't shove it in front of a new player either. And your first time teaching it might make the game a little bit slower, but once you've had one game of this, you'll be able to teach this pretty well and not have too much trouble with it. Now, in terms of aesthetics, pretty sweet actually for the most part. You've got this cool black box and with the gold writing, as I said. The components are similar to what they were before, but some have had upgrades. I know that, and bear in mind I've not played the original, but there are pieces like the mountains and the houses, which are these solid, chunky wooden pieces. They look great on the board, different colours. You've got your cowboys, the little wooden meeples, etc. The board itself looks really cool with the artwork and the spaces. It very much brings out that Wild West theme. If there's any nitpicks I have to say with the aesthetics, it's more that the artwork on the characters is a bit not my style. I wouldn't say it was perfect artwork, but it's okay. It fits the bill. You know what it is. It's nothing to sing about, but it's nothing to really get annoyed about either. The only slight annoyance with the aesthetics is that you have these like giant wooden pieces, you have these wooden meeples, you have all this stuff, and then you get the parcels, which are these little, they basically signify what person, what player owns what bit of land, your property tiles as they're called, and they're kind of flimsy cardboard. They're not the strongest thing in the world. Granted, they're simply there just to cover the space so that you can put other tiles on there, and the building tiles are a lot better than these little property ones, but still, maybe they could have done something else. Maybe had it like an outline where you slot the property tile in. That would have been quite cool, but then maybe you wouldn't notice the colour as much. I don't know. It's a minor nitpick. I wouldn't say there's a component in here that I would call bad. I think everything in here is decent quality, and it had better be, because it is kind of asking for a lot of cash. I believe that you buy this one in the UK for around £75 as an online retailer, probably more if you get it from a local friendly gaming store. It's going to cost a fair bit to get this game, and aesthetics wise, decent, but maybe you can actually get better in a game that costs this much. So that aside, you're obviously probably thinking, well, is the game good enough to justify that price? And I would say, wait and see. But mechanically, the game is pretty sound. I like worker placement in general, but as I look through my top 100, I have some select worker placements that I like in my top 50 that I adore, but then the bottom half doesn't have a lot of worker placements. So worker placements are something that I'm a little bit more fussy about because you get so many of them these days. They have to really bring something new to the table or give me something unique that I don't have in some of these others in order to really make it sing. Now, the whole planning your actions out and then resolving them, that's nothing special. You've got quite a lot of actions to choose from though. You can get wages, you can go gambling, you can get money for various different victory paths you're going for. You can get victory points for trading money and other victory paths like having lots of guns and having lots of property tiles. There are about 7 or 8 buildings that you can buy during the game and they refresh each round. For the most part, they sort of slide down and then you fill up the blanks. But yeah, different buildings will come out. They all have different ways of scoring. Some are much more rarer than others, so they're quite unique when they show up in the game. And you can get the roads that allow you to connect the houses to your network because you have to build some properties, but they also have other benefits for other victory points as well. So there's quite a lot of options that you can do, and I'm pleased to say that there's a fair amount of balanced paths to victory from what I'm seeing so far. Granted, you could do an analysis on this to find out if that's like 100% the case, but from my impressions, it seems fairly well balanced. I have tried different paths here and I've seen others try different paths and they've all stood a fighting chance of winning. I've had a game where, I think my first game I settled for paint the land green. So I was buying up parcels of land and putting as many properties down as I can, even if they didn't generate a ton of income each. But I was also getting just a lot of the land. Even if I didn't fill it with much, I at least bought land, because land is worth victory points at the end as long as you have something on it. It can be a mountain for all it matters. And then I had one game where I didn't build many properties. I instead filched off other players, because you have the dueling aspect, which I'll get onto in a minute. And that allows me to say, well, I don't need to build these properties. I'll just collect enough firepower so that I can come and get your income. And that tended to do quite well as well. And all the different buildings, you can get income in different ways. So maybe one game you decide I'm going to be a miner and you take the mines, you put them next to mountains, they generate a lot of income for you and you make your resources that way. Perhaps you want the ranches with empty spaces. Perhaps you want the drugstore and the banks and the saloons that like to have all those chunky red houses nearby, in which case you build yourself a little metropolis in your area. And as I say, it's definitely more interactive because the way that your opponents build on this board can have an effect, negatively and positively, on your income. Somebody might buy up those mountains that are near your mine. Oh well, your income goes down. Sorry, sucks to be you. But then somebody might have to put houses on the map in certain ways, and in doing so, they put a house near where you are, and so, I get a little bit of extra income from there. And I like the way that the income is derived from turning a tile, and basically it's got 4 sides, and you turn it based on how much of the criteria you fill out. So you can constantly adjust these things as the game goes on, and it makes tracking income relatively easy. I was kind of afraid that it was going to be quite fiddly, and if you see my review of the card game, I mentioned a lot about things that were a bit blur on the graphic design and very fiddly. This game doesn't have any of that really. I never really found anything in this game that I found to be really, really fiddly, including the scoring, funny enough, because the scoring is thankfully so much simpler in this version. You know, the income is derived by different means, but you have a reference sheet that tells you, yeah, hello, reference sheet, why didn't you put it in the other game?
A shameful display!
But it allows you to see all the different buildings, how you build them. So do they need a road? Do they generate a house for you? What income they generate and how, and whether they give you guns for firepower. So you can see all of this on a single A4 reference sheet, which needs a little bit of explaining at first because it's all iconography, annoyingly. They could really maybe added some text, but you know, once you get that stage done, you can kind of just look at it and go, oh yeah, I want to build a drugstore. I'm going to need roads. I'm going to have to put a house down. We're going to put it there. Okay, that's cool. And then when you're doing your income, you think, oh, I've got a drugstore there. Hang on, what does it get me? Free for every house. Ah, cool. You know, you can check these things, and I don't have to sit there with a rule book and constantly tell people. But when you get to the final scoring, it's simply a further trade of money for victory points. I think $6 for a victory point, so not that efficient. But then it's essentially 2 VPs for every parcel of land that you have with something on it. A house, a mountain, one of your properties. Something that you have developed a property on. Other than that, the victory points are purely what you have scored throughout the game. So the scoring phase at the end is actually pretty quick. You just have to count up a few spaces on the board and job done. And oh my god, it felt like such a relief. The scoring in the card game takes forever and it's fiddly and annoying. Here, dirt simple. And you can make this a little bit more complex, but we'll get onto those later. So the first thing I want to mention that I personally like, but I think is going to make this game very divisive for people, that's the dueling aspect. The dueling aspect is cool, where you can go to a space, but there's a chance you might not get it. Or you know, the odds might be in your favour, it depends how much firepower you've got. What you have to do is that you have to roll a die, add the number of workers that you have spare, that you didn't use. Not the most efficient way to get firepower, but hey, it might have just happened. The number of guns that you have in general, which is a permanent supply that just builds up and builds up, you know, great. And you might get some temporary modifiers, like a character gives you more, or a token on an action space gives you more, stuff like that. You roll a die, add it up, winner gets the action. And I think defender wins ties, doesn't really matter, but there is a, oh no, it's based on pass order. So yeah, there's a tiebreaker, but mainly it's roll a die and add those modifiers. So there is a little bit of luck in how that works, but it can be mitigated. You know it's coming. If you deliberately play the game with little firepower and barely any spare meeples, then you know that going in that you're at the risk of having things taken off you. So you need to build up your firepower, or you just need to try and go for actions that nobody else wants. So it's not like it springs up as a nasty surprise on you. If you've got a drugstore that's doing so well on income, like it's on max income, and you don't expect someone to come and try and filter your income at some point, then you are naive beyond recognition, because you know it's going to happen. So you have to try and defend it, or accept someone's going to filter it off you. So that's just the way it is. There is a way I'll get onto later that you can remove this luck aspect. Personally, I like the luck aspect in this. You know, you're not getting hosed out completely with this. It's not like one person's getting picked on all the time, and if they are, they probably should be doing different actions or getting some more firepower. But this is dueling. This is dueling in the Wild West. Exactly why would you want it to not have a bit of luck involved? It makes it tense, it's entertaining, especially as you can have 3 or 4, you can have like 5-way duels in this. It doesn't matter how many people are in the game, if they're all sharing an action space, they all duel. So you can have 4 or 5 people wanting this action space so bad that they all get their guns out and start firing at each other. It's wonderfully thematic, and it just adds that nice little bit of tension without adding too much luck to the game. But I know a few, like, you know, Euro skeptics out there are going to go, oh my god, I can't play this game. Too much luck for me. I want nothing but skill. No, blah, 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 blah.
I thought we could settle this like men.
You thought wrong, dude.
Like I say, that aspect is kind of divisive. I personally like it, but just bear that in mind going in, that this is definitely a much more interactive Euro. You are sharing spaces and doing duels. The land is communal. It's not build up your own tiny city. No, it's this whole block of land. Everybody is buying up different spaces and getting in your way or nicking your favorite spots or influencing your income negatively and positively. Compared to a lot of other worker placement games, this is one of the most interactive ones I have played. There is no way that you can call this multiplayer solitaire. It just flat out isn't. And that's one of the best things about it, actually. So many of these worker placement games can be accused of being multiplayer solitaire. Whoopee, you blocked my space. That's not direct player interaction. The fact that you can duel each other in this, and the fact that you are actively influencing what your opponent is doing based on the land you're buying, there's a bit more direct interaction in this. And whether you want that or not in your Euro is up to you. Personally, I love the fact that it's in there. The game length on the box says 90 minutes, and again it goes for that same problem that the card game has, where it literally just says 90 minutes flat. It doesn't mention anything about different player counts. And in this, you can play it between 2 to 6 players. There is no solo mode in this, unless you've got a variant online, but in the official box, no solo variant. 2 to 6 players. Do you honestly believe that it's 90 minutes for 2 to 6 players? Wrong. No. I would say that, on average, this tends to be about half an hour a player. The first game I taught of this, we finished it in somewhere between 2 to 2.5 hours, and that included teaching, and that was 4 players, all of us new. That's pretty good going for a fairly meaty-ish Euro on your first try with teaching and setup and takedown. Pretty good going. 90 minutes, you could do that with 2 players easily. 3 players, if you know what you're doing, but maybe closer to 2. 4 players, you're looking at the 2 to 2.5 hour mark, depending on experience. 5 and 6 goes a bit too long for my liking. It works with 5 and 6. I'm not going to say that you should never play this with 5 or 6 players. But here's a couple of problems with 5 and 6 players. Firstly, length. If you don't mind your games being really long, then fine. But for when you're only doing 4 rounds, I kind of want the game not to take too long. And when you play 5 or 6 players, you are in big danger of hitting that 2.5 to 3 hour mark or beyond, and that's a bit too long for this game. I like this game to take 2 to 2.5 hours max. The shorter the better, and perfect, works every time. The other problem with 5 and 6 players is back to the previous point about the dueling. Oh my god, the interactivity in this game is racketed up to 11 when you do this. You imagine that you've got no extra spaces, they're not taken away, they're not limited with player scaling, but you just have so many people dueling for spaces. It's going to be in your face, and you are going to have to deal with a lot of duels and a lot of interaction with 5 or 6 players. If you're not comfortable with that, then don't play 5 or 6 players. Personally, I will play 5 and 6 players, but only with experienced people. I would much rather play this with 2, 3 or 4. 3 or 4 is the sweet spot, actually. 4 is still pretty decent with this. 3 or 4 and you're looking for the most ideal amount. And finally, to wrap up this review, the replay value is amazing in this, because unfortunately the action spaces don't necessarily change, but different buildings come out in different times for different games, so that influences how the game goes. But the real good replay value here is those characters. The characters add extra special abilities that you can have, and you can choose which one you want each round, again based on turn order, but you only use 7 characters. I forget the exact amount, but there's somewhere like 18 to 21 characters in this game. You use 7. They're all double-sided. The other side is a slightly more advanced ability based similarly to the one it already had on the yellow side. So let's just say 20 characters. You're talking 20 characters, 40 different powers. You use 7 powers. You can mix and match the yellow and the red powers to your heart's content. You can use any combination of 7 you like. It gives you some presets and certainly tells you to use the initial 7 characters on the yellow side for your first game. Definitely recommend you do that. But wow, 40 different powers and I choose 7. Every game is going to be so different with these very unique and very useful powers. The first game I played where I looked at those initial 7, all of them were useful. I never thought there was a bad one. It just depends on when you use it and whether you have the resources to make the most out of it. And then when you throw in all the other characters, there's all sorts of cool stuff. You've got bankers and auctioneers, waitresses, school teachers, Chinese workers. It is actually called the Chinese worker. And, the sheriff, the settler, the mercenaries. There's all sorts of different characters, and they're all really cool to use. and you barely use any out of a giant pool of 40 different powers, 20 odd different characters. Brilliant replay value there. The other aspect of replay value is the variants. You have, I think, 5 variants that you can add to this game. Because essentially this has an expansion built in. So all the buildings that you ever knew for Carson City are in here. I don't know exactly what the expansion added previously because I never played the original one, but just know it's all in here. But you have 5 variants. They're kind of hit and miss. Firstly, and I've not played all the variants. I will say I've not played them all. But when I read about them and the ones that I have tried, you know what you're getting into. The 2 that I'm not as keen on, Outlaws and Horses. They both add some extra mechanics to the game, a bit of extra meat, but I've not tried Outlaws. I tried Horses. Horses was fun. You have like a rodeo that you set up for, but it was maybe adding just a little bit too much meat to the game that didn't need any extra meat or time added. I will use the horses every now and again, but only with experienced players. Never throw it in your first game. And the Outlaws seem a little bit fiddly. I'm not too fun with them either. The 3 variants that you will probably be looking at is one that allows you to do like action sections that simultaneously. Don't use that. That was a variant I really did not like. You know, it can speed up the game, but it's a bit chaotic having to do these action selections simultaneously. It can shorten the game, but yeah, I just personally would not want to use that variant. The 2 variants though that you will probably want to use more often is, firstly, you have almost a bit like Kingsburg, you have a variant where you have these tiles with 1, 2, 3, 4 and various other numbers on them. They are used in the duels. Did you not like the luck aspect? Well, now you can use these tiles. 1 shot only, you play a tile, that's how much you add as the die modifier, and you add your firepower. Personally, boring, don't like it, don't want it, will never use personally. I'm not opposed to it if someone else wants to bring it out, but come on, duels, let me roll the die, that's what I want. But if you hate the luck, you can wipe it out with those tiles. So there you go, there's a solution for you. The one variant I do really like in this, and I want to use it as often as I can, but again, not with new players. Definitely don't use any of these variants with new players. Is a way that allows you to customize your starting setup. You effectively start with a basic setup and it's worth $50 in the normal game. But what you can do is you have this pad full, I mean it's bigger than most score pads in most games, but it allows you to tweak personally what your setup is. You have $50 to spend and a worker. You spend your money however you like. Do you want extra workers? Do you want more money to start? Do you want less money to start for more victory points? Do you want more property tiles to start? Do you want more roads? Do you want more of, do you want an actual property? I'm not sure if you can get those, but there's all these different categories and rows and even special abilities, one-shot abilities that you can buy to, sorry about the sound, there's a bit of a cacophony going on out there, but you can effectively tweak your starting setup and make yourself really unique from other players. It's going to add another 5-10 minutes to the game because you're going to ask people to actually, tick this off and actually get all their pieces. But with experienced players, it shouldn't be too bad. And I certainly say that if you are experienced enough of the game and you really want to tweak it, use that variant because that is my favorite of all of them in the box because now not only are the characters different, but so is my starting setup. But personally, I could be done with all those variants and push them to one side and just play the game as it is in the box because the games I've played of this just with the normal rules are sound. I really like this game. It's a solid Euro worker placement that I am so sad I never got a chance to get into ages ago. This has been on my wish list for a long time to play and I'm glad I finally have. Good mechanics, good level of interaction, not too much luck and certainly none you can't mitigate. Good theme, represented well, it doesn't feel dry at all. That Western theme comes out, particularly if you sort of roleplay and immerse yourself in it. Different paths to victory, for the most part, decent components, and not as fiddly, anywhere near as fiddly as the card game. You have to kind of get over a couple of fiddly rules about what happens when you build a property and make certain you understand that reference sheet. But hey, at least there is a reference sheet in here. Yeah, that really annoyed me. And, and that's about it. So I really enjoy this. I don't think it's going to suit everybody because of that level interaction and the in-your-face thing, but I think with 2, 3 or 4 players, I get a kick out of this and really enjoy it. So, I've done away with that whole number system now. I'm starting fresh with just an emoji feeling of what this game is like for me, And like I say, I really enjoy it and definitely recommend that if you are a fan of worker placement games, you should give this one a look. However, it is quite costly. The components are sort of justifying it, but not to an extent. This is more about the quality of the game you're getting and the large amount of replay value that's going to justify that cost for you. But it's your money at the end of the day. I can't tell you what to spend your money on. I can just tell you what I think of a game and let you make up your own mind. So, that's it for this Broken Meeple review. I'll see you next time after, actually, I'm probably putting this after I get back from my holiday, to be honest. So, we'll see. I've got a lot on my timetable right now, and it's just trying to fit it all in. So, that's it for me. And remember, even if you are dueling each other left, right, and centre and getting up in each other's faces, just remember, still only a game. So, shake hands and hug when you're done dueling. See you next time, guys. Take care.